This was Tim Walz's chance to introduce himself to Americans, and he presented himself as your friendly neighbor, the high school football coach everyone knows and likes. It was all very carefully choreographed, as these things are at a political convention. Just before he went out to speak, they gave everyone in the audience these big, huge things that say Coach Walz, these big, huge signs. And so as soon as he stepped out onto that stage, everyone was waving those flags and those signs in the air. And at times, people were chanting, Coach, Coach, Coach. Tim Walz used his own life story and his own life experience as a teacher, as a coach, as someone who served in the Army National Guard, to try and relate it to the things and the values that Democrats want to fight for in this election, the things that they say are at risk in this election. The theme of the night, freedom, talking about reproductive freedom, the right to choose how and when you start your family, the freedom to love who you love, advocating for progressive LGBTQ rights, talking about some of the changes, progressive changes as well, that he brought to the school system in Minnesota as serving as governor, making sure, that kids get free lunch and free breakfast, those kinds of things, making them this really a value statement. And he leaned into it in his folksy Midwestern way with that friendly neighbor analogy.
We also protected reproductive freedom because in Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and the personal choices they make. And even if we wouldn't make those same choices for ourselves, we've got a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
There were a couple of standout moments when Tim Walz talked about how he loved his family, thanking his daughter and son and wife, and the camera cut away to Tim Walz's son standing there crying. Those are some of the moments that are starting to get that early traction on social media. That's exactly what Democrats want. They want him to come across as a kind, loving father, a friendly football coach, and that neighbor that you want to get to know.
Those images of Gus Walz jumping up and saying, "That's my dad, that's my dad." You're going to see that for days on social media. If you get a chance, check it out. It's an interesting, spontaneous, authentic moment there. Katie, Walz closed out the night, certainly not the only big name on the stage.
No, and that, of course, was Oprah Winfrey, former talk show host who does not need an introduction. She made a direct appeal to independent voters, saying now is the time to vote your conscience. She said she's an independent voter and that morals and values are on the ballot. She also took a shot at J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate, turning his own words against him.
When a house is on fire, we don't ask about the homeowner's race or religion. We don't wonder who their partner is or how they voted. No, we just try to do the best we can to save them. And if the place happens to belong to a childless cat lady, well, we try to get that cat out too.
Taking J.D. Vance's words about women and childless women, taking them and using them against him. And that is what we heard tonight and we'll likely hear again tomorrow.
All right, Katie Simpson in Chicago. So now let's go to Paul Hunter. Paul, the buzz Tim Walz has been generating both on the campaign trail and tonight with that speech, I mean, this is not exactly normal for a running mate.
No, it's not. And tonight we got a sense of why there's that buzz. Look, this is a guy who, 2-3 weeks ago, nobody outside of Minnesota or the political class in this country had really heard of. I'm overstating it a little bit, obviously, but by and large, he's come out of nowhere. And already his brand is an important one for the Harris campaign. And that's a normal guy, a guy who isn't weird, to borrow that word from him. A guy in a role now where there's also kind of a requirement to sometimes take on the role of pit bull, to go after the opponents in a way sometimes the presidential candidate cannot. He's got to be a lot of things. We know about his resume and the National Guard, and he was congressman in Washington. He was a teacher, he was a football coach. And speaking of football coaches, Adrienne, he played that tonight. The crowd had, the signs they were carrying said Coach Walz. How American dad-ish does that get, for one, if that's part of the brand they want to portray with Tim Walz? But he spoke to that in, one of his many attempts to rile people up, to as he would say it, jack people up. Let's give a listen to a clip from him tonight.
You know, you might not know it, but I haven't given a lot of big speeches like this. But I have given a lot of pep talks. So let me finish with this, team. It's the fourth quarter. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. We're driving down the field. And boy, do we have the right team.
So aiming at firing people up, but, regular guy, America's dad, football coach, that's the kind of thing that I think has attracted Tim Walz to the Harris people.
And interesting, that one of the biggest cheers of the night for him was when he said, never underestimate a public school teacher. That will connect with a lot of Americans, as will everything he said about the crushing weight of medical debt, only going to school because of the GI Bill. It sounds like part of the Democratic strategy is to have people, independents, even Republicans, say, that guy's just like my dad. That guy's just like me, sort of thing.
Yeah, while making the case that Democrats have to make. They've got to make the case for the things that we've heard so much from Kamala Harris, for positivity and optimism and joy and forward-looking, but also got to make the case against Donald Trump. And I suspect we'll hear from Walz a lot on that. He was strong against Donald Trump tonight, as we heard from Bill Clinton, as we heard from Michelle Obama and others. But that role to push back hard, to punch Donald Trump in the nose with words, will be Walz's role going down to November 5th. And we heard a good chunk of that tonight from him on stage.
When I was teaching every year, we'd elect a student body president. And you know what? Those teenagers could teach Donald Trump a hell of a lot about what a leader is. Leaders don't spend all day insulting people and blaming others. Leaders do the work.
Regular talk, Adrienne. Again, and a word that we've used a lot lately, authenticity, I think is what Democrats want to see in their candidates, and I believe that is what he exudes. It was a strong performance on stage, I think, by measure of the crowd in this room, the bubble in this room, in fairness, but it played very well in this arena tonight.
Interesting. All right. Paul Hunter, so grateful to you, also in Chicago with us.